I'm reviewing King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's Flying Microtonal Banana. Oh my God, this is exactly what the professor, clearly the best source for any information on hallucinogenics, described in that episode of Gilligan's Island where Marianne took some poisonous mushrooms. But man, if this is mushrooms, I'm ordering myself a container load of shiitake or morels or whatever it is they're boiling up at Maine Gizzard, Stu Mackenzie's place. What Flying Microtonal Banana has is a fair bit of everything, which is what makes it so entertaining. Open Water has a power charge, a funky backbeat, a snaking guitar line, the smell of brine, overlays of both early Pink Floyd and peakier Stone Roses, the strong suggestion of bagpipes, and 7 minutes in which to say it all. Rattlesnake doesn't try for half that complexity. Instead, it sits on a Hume Highway rhythm for its 7 minutes, says little more than Rattlesnake, and gets you into a kind of microtonal trance. By contrast, Nuclear Fusion slows down, thickens, and takes a semi-dozy psych folk route, as much pentangle as anything coming out of Perth. Then there's the potential space rock of Melting that finds instead a jazzy subset. And I haven't even mentioned the freak scene of Doom City, which switches back and forth between Italian horror movie soundtrack and London's underground happenings, or the title track which takes up some Indian tones, instruments, and possibly a salwar kameez. The songwriting may sometimes seem more like door opening and making room for whatever comes out next, but I suspect there's actually a fair bit of thought gone into the door, the room on the other side, and the space set up for whatever comes. Now, put it on, sit right down, and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. Coming on this trip with me? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll come. I'll come for a while. There's a song on here, I think it's the second song, it's called Melting. And it just reminds me, I could see the Oompa Loompa singing it in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It really sounds like there's a kid who's eating the candy and is just starting to melt. And
I
the
thought
Oompa
it was
Loompas
kind of
are going.
medieval, that song, actually. It kind of had a medieval vibe, I thought.
Yeah, it's quite, obviously it conjures various images for various people, the album. And the album, it almost feels like a steam train to me. There's just like this propulsive force to it, and it just, as soon as it starts, it doesn't really stop until the end of the album, and you find yourself just really getting into this groove with them, because I know they've got 2 drummers, and I think they use that really effectively. The only downside to that is I think that some of the songs become a little bit interchangeable. There's a lot of that thing where the vocal melodies are following the guitar lines, and they're great, and I think it sounds really natural. It doesn't surprise me that they put out so many albums, because they don't sound forced when they do this at all. But that was my only, I guess, complaint about the record, is that I just found some of it started to seam into the next.
I think this probably less than previous albums the songs ran into themselves for me, because Not a Gone Infinity was literally the one track pretty much the whole way through. This one actually had, I think for the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, in King Gizzard history, fade outs in some songs, and I was like, wow, and that for me kind of threw me, because it was almost like they'd started this idea. I guess you were saying the door being opened to this idea, and then the song would fade out after, a piddling 3.5 minutes or something for those guys. But the whole thing about the medieval sound is, and the song, the album called Microtonal Flying Banana, is they've had these guitars made that have got frets in different places to give them the opportunity to make microtonal riffs. And
that's cool.
And it's just, their inventiveness is, these guys, they would not be 30 years old yet. Like Stu's not 30 years old yet. And the inventiveness is just amazing.
The thing that gets me about them is exactly what you're saying. The ideas that are pouring out of them, they've been doing this for not that long, and they've got so many brilliant ideas that they just keep throwing out there, and you think they're going to run out. They're going to throw too many things out. It doesn't happen.
But instead of that, they build new musical instruments or get their friends to... I remember when they first started playing, and they were just a garage band with no lyrics. Like, students used to like yelp in the songs, and now they're just doing this, which is, it's so good. I definitely heard... maybe not so much Oompa Loompas in some of the songs. I heard the Mighty Boosh in one of the songs. There's that Open Water song, and it sounds like they're in the tundra.
Yeah. Is that the one that has that riff that sounds like Knight Rider in it? I thought. And Open Water is like, Knight Rider, this is Knight Rider.
People like to put up examples, musicians, artists who've wrecked their lives with drugs, and say, here is an example of why drugs are bad. These guys, I would put them up constantly and say, kids, do try this at home. If you can make something as good as these guys on whatever drugs you're on, Go for it.
Like people say, drugs make you lazy, you're lying around doing nothing. This is like their second album this year.
Yeah.
They're releasing 5 albums in 2017.
Doesn't it probably
Take the drugs. Get off your ass and take the drugs, kids.
I'm sure it depends on the kind of drugs.
And also, they
you're
probably don't
taking,
even
though,
take
right?
drugs. They're probably just these men.
Yeah, that's what I
musicians that are
reckon too.
insanely
Yeah.
just talented.
They're doing stuff. People have been doing psychedelic-y stuff for a few years, but these guys are actually taking it further. They're not just mimicking a sound. They're experimenting instrumentally in terms of the instruments and just concepts. So if we had a rating that wasn't just stars, I would be giving them 3 3/4 tabs.
Yeah.
But I'll settle for 3 3/4 stars.
Yeah, and 3/4 of a tab, you just end up, 12 hours in going, I should have taken the other quarter.
Is that how it works?
I imagine. So that's what this album tells me anyway.